Time for Eye on Africa here on France 24. I'm Jean-Emile Jamin, taking a look at all the news from the continent. It starts with these headlines. We're one day ahead of general elections in South Africa, where we look at what's at stake for the ruling African National Congress, in danger of losing their majority for the first time since the birth of democracy. It's a country, though, where the youth make up the majority of the population, but a bleak outlook is keeping many young South Africans away from the polls. We go deeper, taking a look at the reasons behind the potential stay away. And at 90 years old, Oumar Dieme gets to put his name in the history books. The former Senegalese tirailleur brings a literal light to contributions made by former soldiers to France's history, set to carry the Olympic torch at the Paris Games. Thanks for joining us here on Eye on Africa. South Africa gears up for elections on Wednesday in a vote billed as the most pivotal since 1994. The youth are an important part of that election, given the demographic makeup of the country, but less than 50% of South Africans under the age of 20 are registered for Wednesday's vote. This is despite the IEC, the Independent Electoral Committee, running voter education campaigns in schools. France 24 looked into why so few young South Africans are interested in participating in the democratic process their parents fought so hard for.
A civic education session in Cape Town at Forest Heights High School. Electoral Commission agents encourage young people to vote and explain how to do so.
So if you don't vote, you can't complain.
Of 35 voting-age students in this class, only 2 have registered to vote. They say they've lost faith in the democratic process.
There's no party that is completely made up of angels. There are people in that party, divisions that want personal gain.
We are discouraged by the empty promises and false hope.
Like, look at the school, look at the sanitary wave. They promised that they will give us better education, they will give us better stuff, but it never happens.
We're trying to get the message to them that we are not going to vote because you guys are also not taking action.
Disenchantment with the election also pervades South Africa's universities, particularly amongst the so-called born-free generation, born after the end of white minority rule in 1994. Studies show that they are not apathetic, but rather they have lost confidence in their systems of government.
If you look, for example, at the activism over there, or you look at other spaces where young people are involved, it's not necessarily that they don't want to be involved. It's just this frustration with the options which are presented to them.
Despite the Electoral Commission's best efforts, of 40 million South Africans of voting age, 13 million are expected to stay away from the polls.
We are not yet there because we are an increasingly young population, but we have benefited from the online self-registration as it relates to younger persons.
Some hope more education can erode some of the disillusionment and misinformation that have demotivated South African voters.
Maybe we should do it earlier when elections are coming up, that there's conversations and that you actually get your history teachers on board.
Electoral Commission staff have promised to return to this high school to help register everyone over the age of 18, but after the May 29 elections.
Staying in South Africa, and illegal immigrants are very concerned about their future. A recent white paper makes it harder for foreigners to gain work, visas, and some parties are also using local resentment towards foreigners as a campaign tool. Our reporters found out more about their concerns.
Gayton McKenzie is very popular in Cape Town's poorest suburbs. His party, the Patriotic Alliance, has been calling for the mass deportation of illegal foreigners for several years.
When we take over on the 30th of May, all the illegal foreigners, they are going home unapologetically. They are selling drugs here. They are working as cheap labor. No matter who says what, you can call me xenophobic, but I'm here for South Africans first. Patriots.
In the streets, foreigners avoid the electoral campaign, aware that the country has experienced deadly xenophobic riots. In this African art market, most of the sellers refuse to be filmed. Mbake has lived here for over 20 years but remains cautious.
Anything can happen at any moment. We cannot exclude that. They have tightened the rules around permits. It's become much more complicated. We'll see what the new policies will bring.
The government has just adopted a white paper to strengthen border control, and refugees like Liliane, who requested asylum in 2003, had a much easier time.
They welcomed us here, but there were problems. You see, there are problems in Zimbabwe. Malawi is a very poor country. Let's not even talk about Congo. You know what's going on with us. Same in Somalia. So a lot of immigrants came here. There is no longer room for everyone, you see.
Zimbabweans are most worried. There are officially 1 million Zimbabweans in South Africa. Unofficially, the number may be 4 million. Work permits are not being renewed. Patience's visa expires in December, and she is desperate.
Because for now, I can tell myself I'm the breadwinner. Be able to afford me, myself, my child, and my family at home, especially my parents, they still need me. So if I'm told to move out of here, then that means that's the end of it.
Immigrants are concerned that after the election, whatever the result, government policy towards foreigners will continue on its strict trajectory.
So all the talk is about the elections on Wednesday in South Africa. There's been a steady decline for the African National Congress, the party once headed by Nelson Mandela, now under President Cyril Ramaphosa. Accusations of corruption, mismanagement of state-owned enterprises and rampant crime have contributed to a stagnant economy as well as mass unemployment under their watch. After 30 years in power, the party, by all accounts and polls, looks set to lose its majority, meaning coalition governance could be on the horizon. For more, let's cross over to Johannesburg, where I'm joined over the phone by Milton Nkosi. He's a former BBC journalist and current researcher at AfraSeed. Milton, thanks so much for joining us. It's a coalition time, possibly, for South Africa. Is there a reason to be worried for the average voter?
Yes. The average voter of the ANC can be worried because the ANC, since the end of apartheid, enjoyed a comfortable majority in all the 5 elections that the country has had since the end of white minority rule. But all polls show that even with all the suggestion that the ANC will come below 50%, the ANC will still emerge as the largest single political party in South Africa in this election tomorrow.
But then what kind of coalitions could we be seeing? Obviously, if you have a 50% ANC that rules anything out, just below 50 could mean something different to potentially a 40% ANC?
I don't think we will get to 40%. The polls were suggesting that about 6 months to 3 months ago, but the mood has changed in the country. It looks like the ANC will just come below 50, if at all. They may even hit the 50% mark, but if they do come below 50, as predicted by a lot of the surveys conducted, that means that all they need is a small political partner to join with them to take them across the line. So that is very possible. On the other hand, the political opposition have come together in what they call the multi-party coalition. They are going to form a coalition as the opposition party. Even all of them put together, they may not reach the 50% mark.
And that being headed by the Democratic Alliance, that multi-party coalition. On the other side, you have a potential for maybe a grouping of the hard left. We've got the likes of the Economic Freedom Fighters and the Mkhonto weSizwe party of Jacob Zuma. How has the MK party rocked the boat in terms of the build-up to this election?
Yeah, the MK party is the political party formed by the former president Jacob Zuma, who has been angry with the current leadership under Cyril Ramaphosa. So Jacob Zuma, who used to be president, had a deputy, Cyril Ramaphosa. Cyril Ramaphosa is now the president. Jacob Zuma has gone off to form his own political party called the MK Party, and that is more popular in the province, the eastern coastal province of KwaZulu-Natal, Mr. Zuma's own home province, than it is in other parts of the country. So they will have an impact in KwaZulu-Natal, definitely, but probably not as much as they are hoping for in other parts of South Africa. South Africa has got 9 provinces. They are only strong in 1. and they might have a dent somewhere around Johannesburg in the Gauteng province. But definitely they will be battling to make an impression in the Northern Cape, in Mpumalanga, in the Eastern Cape, in the Western Cape, and Limpopo in the northern part of South Africa. So MK Party is definitely going to shake things up for the ANC, but definitely that will be happening within the confines of one province, KwaZulu-Natal.
And Milton, just a final question. I want to stick with the MK Party because there hasn't been that much contestation with the International Electoral Committee, bar for party members of the Umkhonto we Sizwe Party. There have been some fears that there could be a reignition of that violence we saw in July 2021. In your opinion, is there a reason to be concerned for the safety of voters possibly in tomorrow's elections?
There's always a reason to be worried. In the 21st century, the world is more unpredictable than it's ever been. But South Africa, judging by its own track record, has held peaceful democratic elections and a peaceful handover of power since the end of white minority rule. There is no reason to believe that this will be different.
Milton, thank you so much. That's some reassured words there from Milton Nkosi, researcher at Afrasid. He's also a former journalist with the BBC. Milton Nkosi joining us there from Johannesburg ahead of that South African vote. Well, on Tuesday, further up north, Kenya launched public hearings into alleged human rights violations by British troops in the former colony. The most high-profile case dates back to 2012, when the body of a young Kenyan mother was found in a septic tank in the central town of Nanyuki. That's just one of several cases and accusations leveled against British soldiers in the local British Army training unit in the town. The latest hearings will last until Thursday, and they'll also be examining alleged ethical misconduct, and that includes corruption, fraud, discrimination, and abuse of power. And you see those images from the first day of that hearing there. Meanwhile, the Olympic flame will have had many bearers by the time it reaches Paris for the final event, but there are few as intriguing as 90-year-old former Senegalese rifleman Oumar Diémé. He hails from the small village of Badiana, and he served in the Senegalese Tirailleurs Corps until its disbandment in the 1960s. He later settled in northeastern Paris, where he and his compatriots faced another battle with the French state. Caroline Loyer tells us all about one of the oldest torchbearers for this year's Games.
Celebrated by his native village, Oumar Diémé has been chosen to carry the Olympic flame in France next July. A surprise and a source of pride for this 90-year-old.
They said, "You've been chosen. What do you think?" It took me a few minutes to realize, and I said yes. It's an honor for me.
Oumar Diémé proudly shows his medals. He enrolled in the army in 1953. The same year, he was sent to Vietnam, where he fought for France, and then later Algeria. That's where he was when he heard of Senegal's independence in 1960. Today, his brother couldn't be prouder.
We couldn't dare to dream of such a thing. It first surprised us, but actually it's not hard to believe, given the values he embodies.
With 2 months to go before the big day, the lucky man can't avoid thinking about his comrades who fell in battle or have since died.
My companions from Indochina, Algeria, and even the National Army. Many have served the National Army. They are no longer here. So if God lets me get this far, all I can do is thank the good Lord.
Oumar Diémé will carry the flame in Bondy, a Paris suburb where he lived before returning to Senegal last year. According to the organizers, this will be an important moment in history, a moment that the former rifleman has asked to share with his son.
Make sure to tune in for that torch-bearing ceremony with Oumar Diémé leading the line. That's it for Eye on Africa in this edition, but please stay tuned for more here on France 24.
I do have more elections behind me than ahead of me.
This will be my first.
I've never taken democracy for granted.
And neither will I.
I've seen big changes in Europe start with voting.
I want my vote to start more.
That is the beauty of democracy.
It's about what we decide.
Together.
Trust is our most precious asset. Every day, around the world, France 24, RFI and Monte Carlo Doualier join forces to bring you free, independent, verified, balanced information that fights manipulation, and in 21 languages. France Média Monde has been awarded the Journalism Trust Initiative Standard, which guarantees the professionalism and reliability of our international news media with a score of 100%. Trust is not automatic. It must be earned and cultivated. Thank you for your trust.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.